Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. This is a 2017 Triumph Rocket 3 that I used to own and had to do a valve cover gasket replacement on, and that's what I'm going to be showing in this video. This footage is from a while ago and I just wanted to give you guys a heads up that the audio quality is really bad, so I apologize about that ahead of time. Anyways, let's get into it. So right now I'm going to start working on replacing the valve cover gasket on the Triumph Rocket 3, and I'm going to do my best to do a tutorial because I found that there's not really any tutorials on how to do it on YouTube. There are some for like to replace the ram air intake, which is the first part of what we need to do is remove the intake and everything. So I'm following those steps, and then I'll try to do the rest and show you guys how it's done. However, this is my first time doing it, so I really don't know what I'm doing. So you guys are going to go along with me on this and find out how this is done. Also wanted to mention the valve covers come from the dealer in like an envelope type of baggie, and they're folded. So you want to put it out in the sun so it lays out in the sun and goes back to its original form. Okay, so the first thing, there is a 5mm hex bolt that goes in here that you remove. I'm not sure where I put mine right now, which is an issue, but I'll find it later. Anyways, and then after you remove that, we have to remove the air intake cover, or it's also called the bear claw. And there's going to be an 8mm bolt right here and an 8mm bolt right here. Once you remove those, this just pops off like this, exposing the air intake. I also removed the toolkit and the battery because we're going to be disconnecting some wires, and I always remove the battery when doing that. After that's done, you can lift the fuel tank up like this and prop it up. So to prop it up, let me see if I can show you guys. There is a little bar right here that's used to prop it up. All you do is put it into the bolt hole and right there, like that. I wish you could angle it more higher so there's more room to work in here, but that's all we have to work with at the moment. So yeah. So I found a hex bolt. This is the one that goes in here. One thing I do recommend to have is a little plate like this that's magnetic. It magnetizes the bolts in, and you can put it up to anything like the exhaust, and it holds any tools or bolts that you have. Okay, the next thing we need to do is get into, I don't know if you can see where I'm pointing, but there is that 5mm hex bolt right there as well, and another one right there. Those do have a washer on them as well, and if anything slips off your tool and falls in behind here, it will end up falling behind the oil tank. And based on what I found online, it's almost impossible to get to it without removing the oil tank. The first thing I'm doing is putting a bunch of paper towels over the oil tank, just hopefully catch the bolts and washers if they do fall. Next, what I'm going to do is start unbolting the bolt with the hex key, and then I'm going to take this extendable magnet and put it right beside it to magnetize and hold the bolt, so you guys can see, hold the bolt and the washer so that if they do slip, I don't lose them. So I was able to get both the bolts off successfully without them falling in, so we're good on those. So the next thing we need to do is remove the bolts. You see the bronze colored ones. They're the ones that hold the clamp down to the intake box. They're basically the same thing as this, but there's one right here and one behind these tubes right there, which is going to be very difficult to get to. And these are 3mm, so you're going to need those. So for these, I'm going to use one of these hex tools. That way it's easier to get in there. I just realized there's 3 of the same clamps right here that need to be removed before the airbags can come off. I'm also going to plug up the ports right here with paper towels, just so that no dirt or anything gets in there. So to remove this part of the intake, you need to remove the sensor and this bolt. I forget what the sensor is called, but yeah, you gotta remove that one. It just unplugs and then it pulls out from the intake. Another thing to keep in mind when removing the sensor, be careful because that tip right there is glass, so if you break it, break the sensor. You do have to make sure that you take these clamps and the rubber grommets off of the intake tubing. And while I'm taking the intake parts off, I wanted to share with you guys a Bible verse that I've been thinking about this week. It comes from Isaiah chapter 40, verse 29. It says, "He gives power to the weak, and to those who have no might, he increases strength." And right here, you need to disconnect this plug and the hose that goes underneath. So with all that removed, this is what we're looking at. There's a bunch of wiring here. There's a bunch of wiring here for the wire harness. I don't want to remove that. I will probably remove just this bracket right here, because we need to get to all of these hex bolts, which I believe there's 9 of them, and a few of them are back here, which I can get to, but when it comes down to torquing them down, it's going to be difficult to get to this one, and then the 2 that are right there. So that's why I'm thinking of moving the wiring. I'm not sure if that's what I'm going to do just yet. I'm going to keep looking around and try to figure it out. But to remove this little bracket right here, all we have to do is, there is a bolt right here, an 8mm, and then another one right there. That one, and then let me try to point it out, and then this top one right here. Okay, so I got the 2 bolts off, so now I can remove this bracket. And honestly, I have to say that this bracket has been the hardest part to remove so far. So I moved away some of the wiring and decided I'm going to remove the plastic pieces from both sides right here. And all it is 2 5mm hex bolts that go right there. Same thing on the other side. And once you remove it carefully, it gives a little bit more access to these areas right here, where I think I can easier get to the bolts. I'm also going to remove the coolant reservoir. Well, not fully remove it, but move it over so it's hanging down more, easier to get in. And that's just going to require one 8mm bolt right there, because we removed the other one right here while we were removing the bear claw. So with the coolant reservoir moved over, you can see we can easier get to this bolt right here. Now we have easy access to these bolts and a little bit of easier access to this bolt right here. I'll be able to use my torque wrench to torque it down from outside of here. The only other thing we need to remove, I believe, is this intake air hose, just because we have another bolt underneath. But I can also technically just move it upwards like this and not bother with it. So on the right side of the bike, I unscrewed this bracket right here. Sorry, this bracket right here, which is being held on by 2 8mm bolts. And it's holds the ignition coils, which nice part about these are already numbered, so I don't have to number them myself. They're 5, 4, 6, 5, 4, 3, and then 2 and 1 are separately right here. They're not connected to this one. So I'm going to take a picture, make sure I have a picture of how it's connected, remove these plugs, and then I'm just going to remove the coils completely. That way, whenever I need to take the valve cover out, I can just lift it and it's easier to remove it because it's going to be pulled out this way. So I took out all the coils, and then I took all the wire harnesses and the coils, the 1 and 2. I taped everything up as best I could to give me more room right here to work with. So now all I really need to do is, take a size 6mm hex bolt and then just take the valve cover off. There should be 9 bolts. There's 1, 2, 3 are here, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 1 back here, number 9. Just be careful not to drop anything into the coils. Slots where the spark plugs are. I didn't take the spark plugs out. I don't believe I need to, but we'll find out. As you can see, there's not much room between the fuel rail and removing everything. So I'm going to just loosen it, the bolts, and then I'll take out the rest by hand. So for these two, it's kind of difficult to get a wrench in there. So I found it easier to just put the hex tool in, and this is why we have a magnet to get anything out. So try not to drop anything on there. Try to set this up so I can use 2 hands. Okay, so one hand put the hex tool in, and with the other one take one of these wrenches, and then you just break it loose. So you should break it loose, and then you can remove the bolt by hand. The only issue now is, since the wrench doesn't really fit here, I'm not sure how I'm going to use a torque wrench to get in here to torque these down when I'm ready. This one in the back would be easier because I can always loosen the brackets holding the wire harness right here and then fit the wrench in there. But this one has the frame in the way. So I'll have to figure something out for that. So now that I got the bolts out, I took this plastic piece right here that I have, a small tool, and then I just tapped it, put it up against here and tapped it with my hand a little bit and down along this line just to loosen up the valve cover. And now the valve cover comes up a little bit, and I'm just gonna pull it off. See, it comes up, and I just need to do that around the whole thing, and then it should pop off. So I found that this bracket's a little bit in the way. So a T30 Torx bit, I remove the bolt. So I should be able to remove this bracket and hopefully get the valve cover off easier. So that's the valve cover. That's the valve cover seal right there. And that's the internals of the motor, as you can see. So I believe the previous owner has already tried replacing the valve cover gasket. You can see the sealant that was added. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't believe that that's done from the factory. I know that when people replace them, they usually add them. So on top of the valve cover, you have where all the bolts, there's seals on each one. They're kind of difficult to remove, but I just took a flathead screwdriver, put it in like this, and then just kind of pried it up, and it popped off. And that's what they look like. When I was buying the seals for the valve cover, they recommended that we replace all 9 for the bolts as well. So I ended up very carefully prying them off with the flathead screwdriver. Some of them were on very tight, so be careful when removing it so you don't damage your valve cover. So I cleaned up the valve cover, made sure that there's no residue or anything built up on it. I also went through the top of the motor and cleaned up and wiped away any oil or the sealant that was previously used. There was a bunch right here, and on the inside carefully have to clean it up so none of the residue falls into the engine. And then I wiped off everything to make sure that there's no oil residue on any of the surfaces that the valve cover gasket is going to go down on. So this is the new valve cover gasket, and I read online to add a little bit of sealant the same way it was done previously, but I'm going to be using this high temp gasket maker, and I'm going to put a thin layer in all the grooves where it's connecting to the top of the engine, just basically all around. So just as an example, the way it was done here, it was big, like a lot of gunked up and like overflowing in these four corners. I don't want it to be that much. I'm going to be doing very small, thin layer, just so it doesn't gunk up and overflow into the engine. The way, for example, this is the way it was inside of the engine, and I don't want that. So I installed the gasket. It seems to be on correctly. And I went through it and wiped anything, any like oil residue or any kind of residue off the top, and then I'm gonna install the gasket now. Install the valve cover, and hopefully everything lines up properly. The only thing is, like, this piece right here keeps popping up, and I'm hoping that it doesn't get misaligned, because if it does, that's gonna be bad. To get the valve cover, I'm going to do it the same way I did it when taking it out, and just try to carefully shimmy it in like this, and hopefully not move the gasket. I think we're good. It's pretty much lined up, and then once I'm going to push it on, hopefully cover the gasket up, and then torque it down. We'll put the bolts in and do all that good stuff. So what I'm going to do is take these gaskets, put it on the bolts, and then I'm going to just put them in and line them up to the holes. Just wanted to mention, when you put them on, you'll see this side with the shiny like bronze colored metal that goes up, and then this part of the gasket goes downward. And then I'm going to do them pretty much the four corners, just so that the valve cover is aligned, and then I'll start doing all the other ones. And if I'm not going to be torquing them down, I'm just going to be hand tightening them with the hex key. So now that I have all the bolts lined up and like hand tightened with like my fingers, I'm going to start using the hex key to tighten them further, and I'm going to be going in a star shape. So I'm going to be starting off from, for example, like here, then going into this one across, this one back here, and then I'll go to the right one here, to the back one, and then to the left one in the front, this middle one, and then that middle one. And then I'm going to be slowly doing it, going in circles, keep tightening them slowly down, and then once I get them hand tightened, I will get the torque wrench and torque them down. So once you hand tighten all the bolts, go around and take a look at the seal, make sure it didn't get crimped anywhere or misaligned, and then I'm going to torque it down to 10 Newton meters. I know that, I believe that for the manual for the newer ones like this say to do 12. However, on the forums that I read, most people recommend a 10, so that's what I'm going to go with. Worst case scenario, I'll retighten later to 12 if I do have any leaks. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go start pattern the same way I did before, and it should hopefully work. Okay, so I found to get to this back one back, bolt back here, it's easier to remove the plastic pieces that are here. Basically, there's just 3 of these 5mm hex bolts. There's 1, 2, 3. And when you take it off, there will be another one right here for the middle plastic. Once you get that off, there are going to be 2 8mm bolts. One right here, and then one behind this bracket right here. So you can get it to it from underneath. And once you remove that, you can move this bracket up and down. That way you can get the tools in to torque this down. Okay, so I finished torquing everything down. All that's left is to put everything back together the same way I took it apart. However, just wanted to show this part. I believe that this is sticking out too much on this side, so it may leak because it looks like the lip here is smaller than this corner right here, but we'll see how it goes. I have a feeling it's sticking out too much, but we'll see. If it starts leaking, then I guess I'll just have to do this job again. But other than that, everything else is torqued down and looks fine. I'm going to clean it up. And then putting it back together is exactly the same way you take it apart. I don't think you guys want to see that. But I'm going to put this bracket back on, plastics, connect the coils, put the coils in, and then put the air intake back together, and we should be good to go. So once I finished putting the bike back together, I did take it out for a ride and didn't have any leaks or any issues at all. I actually rode the bike for many miles afterwards and didn't have a single leak or a single issue. So I guess that part of the gasket that I thought was sticking out a little far, I guess it wasn't. And yeah, hopefully this video helps y'all with your repairs. There could most definitely be a much easier and much better way to replace the gasket, but this is what I was able to come up with. Yeah, thank you all for watching. Ride safe out there, God bless, and hope to see y'all in the next video.